Let me just start by telling you this is Unit 6 or Chapter 6 from the book. And what I'm going to do, I'm opening the PowerPoint on a different machine, and I'm opening Eclipse on a different machine. And I'm going to start recording my voice and recording the screen on Eclipse, and I'm going to explain what we have in the PowerPoint at the same time. So let's just jump into today's class. We are going to talk about looping. Now, let me just organize the class overall. Number one, we are going to talk about what is looping and how do we implement looping. And by the end of the chapter, we're going to talk about why we are looping. But just to give you an idea, without looping and without selection structure, probably we will not be able to use computers to do anything. So those two concepts, selection structures and repeating structures, by repeating structures I mean looping, basically those are the core of any program that can actually solve a real life problem. So let's jump into this. What is a loop? A loop is basically a structure where you can let the computer repeatedly do the same thing over and over for a specific number of times, or until you decided to stop, or until a certain condition becomes true and then you stop. So looping basically, it's a method that we use to let the computer repeatedly do something. Now, as I said, there are multiple ways to define how is that going to work. For example, do I want it to repeat a certain thing for a specific number of times? Do I want it to repeat this until I decided to stop? Or I can make it repeatedly do the same thing until a certain condition became false, and then you'll leave that looping process. So we're going to cover all of that, of course. Now, just let's jump into this. We have three different types of loops. We have what we call the while loop, and we have the for loop, and we have the do while loop. Now, I'm going to explain them all, of course, and then I'll explain what's the difference between them, and mostly you can use any of them to solve any problem, but in certain cases, one of them will be more suitable for a certain problem than the others. So let's start with some terminology. First of all, when you can create a loop, you will have a body for that loop, which basically it's a number of statements that's going to be executed repeatedly. And then every time those statements are executed, we call that an iteration. So those terminologies are very, very important. And then, as I said before, we have the while loop, the for loop, and the do while loop. We're going to go through them all step by step. Let's start with the while loop. Let's just imagine that I want to show a message on the screen for 10 times. Well, let's try to do that. System dot out dot print line, and let's just put the message here. Hello coronavirus. Hello KCC. I'm talking about coronavirus. I hope everybody's doing well these days. So let's just repeat this 10 times. Control V, Control V, Control V, Control V, Control V. I don't know if that's 10 or what, but again, this is me repeating the same message for 10 times. Let me just execute it so you'll see it here. Hello KCC, hello KCC. Now this is considered redundant. Repeating the same thing multiple times, it's redundant. Instead of that, we can use any of those repeating structures that I was talking about to ask the computer to repeat the same thing for 10 times or 20 times or whatever the number you want. So let's start with the while loop. The while loop basically starts with a keyword while. And then you have to open a parenthesis and you close it. That's the beginning of the while loop. Then after that, you open a curly brace. And then at the end, you close it. So I made a mistake here. Okay, now, what is the while loop? Well, as you can see here, whatever you're going to put between those parentheses, as long as if that thing is true, this will be repeated until this condition becomes false, whatever is between those parentheses. that's where you're going to leave. So just to give you an idea, I'm going to come here and create a variable. So let's go ahead, integer counter equal 1. And I'm going to come here and say, as long as counter is less or equal 10, repeatedly print this message. Now, before I run this code, let's look here. This is my variable. Now, one mistake that I've seen a lot of students fall in, they don't know how to distinguish between the if statement and the while statement. If statement, basically, if I replace this one with if, I'm telling if this condition is true, run this one time. But if I replace the if statement with while, I'm saying if this condition is true, run this statement multiple times, not only one, multiple times. So what do I have to do? Let's just talk about this. What is the value of counter? It's 1, and 1 is less or equal 10, so that's true. So you're going to run this statement and print the message. And then when you get to the closing curly brace here, you go back to the while statement. And then after that, you check the condition again. Well, counter didn't change, still 1. And because it's still 1, it's still going to be less than 10. So you're going to repeat the instruction again. And what I'm trying to say here, if I run this code right now, I will get this message printed on the screen and it will never stop. And this is basically what we call infinite loop, a loop that will go forever. Now, as a good student, as a good programmer, you don't want to have infinite loop. Just remember, infinite loop is bad, very, very bad. So what do? We need to make sure when you create a while loop that the counter that you have here need to be updated, need to change. How is that going to change? That's basically what you have to think about. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come here and say counter plus plus. And I'm going to get back to this plus plus later. We talked about it before. Plus plus basically means increase the counter by 1. So now let's go back to the program. Counter is going to be 1. 1 is less than 10. That's going to print this message. And then after that, before the end of the while loop, it's going to increase the counter by 1. So what is the new value for counter? It's going to be 2. Now 2 is less than 10. There's going to be 3. Then it's going to be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this is going to be repeated 10 times until we get to the point where counter equal 10 is still true. Show me KC, hello KC, KCC. After that, immediately counter is going to be increased by 1, so it's going to be 11. Once it's 11, this condition is going to be false, so you're going to leave. Let me just add something here. I'll just put counter so you'll see what's going on. Now let's give this a try. Run. And here we go. Hello KCKCC 1 all the way to 10. So as you can see here, I was able to repeat the same line for 10 times using 1, 2, 3, 4 lines of code. Now just think about that. If you need to read this for 1,000,000 times, then you're saving yourself a lot of lines of code. Now, of course, put in your mind, this is not why we use while loop to show the same message 10 times. There's a lot of applications, and we're going to talk about them later. But this is here just to demonstrate the process of how the while loop works. Now, let's talk about how do I make the while loop stop. Well, this example here is called a definite loop. Definite loop basically means when you know how many times you want the loop to go. Basically, I said here, I'm going to start counter by 1. I'm going to stop at 10. So I want it to run 10 times. I want it to run 20 times by changing the value here. 30 times, 300 times, 3,000 times. I know how many times I want it to stop. But the question is, what if I don't know? Well, this is what we call indefinite loop. Definite loop basically means when you run the code but you don't know when it's going to stop. And those kind of cases, usually what we do here, let's just change that. I am going to create a character, and I'm going to change the character to be called choice. And I'm going to set the character choice to be 1. And here I'm going to say, as long as choice equal Well, let's change that to yes or y. As long as choice equal y, keep going. Just take this one away. Okay, so what's going to happen here? What I'm going to do, I am going to ask the user to decide if you want to continue or not. So what I can come here and say, well, let's go here in Creo. Remember, since we're using a user, we need scanner, input, equal, new, scanner, system, dot in. And I really hope I'm not boring and you guys are understanding what I'm saying. So let's just go ahead and do this. Import scanner. Here it is, Java util. Okay, so here I go. I'm going to come here and say system dot out dot print line. And I think I'm going to make them 3 videos or more than 1 video instead of making a long one. So let's just keep going here. Do you want to continue? Let's put Y or N. And here I'm just going to come here and say choice equal input dot next, well, dot, did I miss something? Choice input dot next character. Well, there is something not. Input choice. Well, here it is. This is a scanner. I'm trying to read character. Dot next. I call it. Put the mouse here. Okay, let's just get this one to string. For some reason, we have an issue with the character. So I'm just going to go ahead and put it this way. And of course, this is, again, we're going to have a chapter to talk about this, but this is not the right way, but I'm going to keep it for now. Okay, so input next. And here's what's going to happen. Basically, at the beginning, choice equal equal y, and that condition is going to be true. So this is going to be printed on screen. This is going to be following it. Let's make it print instead of print line. After that, you will ask the user to enter a value. And if the user entered the right value, so if the user entered y, you're going to keep going. If the user decides to type n or anything else, the user will stop. So let's run it. Give this a try. So, hello KCKCC. Would you like to continue? Wait. Well, as I said before, this is not going to work. Yeah, I'm not supposed to compare it this way. I'm just going to do it by choice. Remember, we're going to talk about dot equal y. Well, I don't know if I change it to equals yet. Now it's working. Let's give this a try now. Y. As you can see here, every time you type Y, you're going to repeatedly. Now let's just type N, and it's done. Okay, so that's basically explains why we need to use choice equals instead of double sign comparison. Now, just remember, I will talk about that a lot later. But for now, if you want to compare any 2 strings, you have to use dot equals. Okay, so here we go. This is basically how we do use the while loop. If I want to explain a little bit more about while loop before we jump into other types of loops, I'm just going to go and start talking about the following. Number 1, with the while loop, never ever put a semicolon here. You see this? This basically will terminate the while loop. This is going to be the end of the while loop, so this is not going to be part of the while loop. Never put a semicolon here. And I'm going to tell you something. You see how many times I said never? A lot of you guys will do it. Be careful. So never put a semicolon in this area here. Now, if we go back, let me just take comment this section here. And as you can see here, choice equal y, and I didn't update y. Let me just run it to show you what's going to happen. And here, I don't know if you can see it, but look, this is fleshing at the end of it. And if I go all the way up, I have to stop it. Click here to terminate, and let me show you how many times. In case you see what's printed. I can't even tell. This is what we call infinite loop. Why did I end up with an infinite loop? Because my counter, my variable that I use to control the while loop buddy, never changed, never got updated. So as a result, you will never find or get to a case where this condition is going to be false. So you leave it. It's going to be true always. And since this is going to be true always, you're going to be running this body of the loop forever. Okay, so what else do we need to know? I think we should move on and talk about an example of where a while loop will be really, really helpful. Now, I'm going to take this away for now. I'm going to keep the scanner. Let's imagine I asked you to enter a number, and that number must be even. So I'm going to create an integer. I'm going to call it even. And then I'm not going to set it to anything. And then I'm going to come here and say even equal, or before we do that, let's just go ahead and do system.out.print enter an even number, semicolon. And then I'm going to come here and say even equal input dot next. Well, it looks like my Eclipse is acting weird. It doesn't show me the list of functions. I think I have an old version. I need to update it. Anyway, so let's run it, and then let me show the value. I come here, say system dot out dot print line. Now I'll come here and say the even number you entered is. Let's go here and put a plus. Now I'll put what even. Yeah. Now let's run it. So here, enter an even number. Here we go. 12. The even number you entered is 12. Yeah, that's very smart and correct at the same time. So let's enter a number that's not even, 13, for example. Well, here we go. The number you entered is 13. Then the even number you entered is 13, which is, again, that doesn't make sense because 13 is not an even number. Okay, so how do I make sure that the user will enter an even number? Well, if I come here and put an if statement, well, let's try that. If even divided by 2 doesn't equal 0, so that basically means it's not an even number, I'm going to actually come here and ask the user to enter the number again. So let's try that again. Well, let's go ahead. 12. Oops. Let's see, what did I do here? Oh, wait a minute. My bad. What did I say here? If even divided by 2, which is 6. Wait a minute, no. My bad. I need to go with modules. Doesn't equal 0. Yep. Now, this 1 week that I was far away from everything has some effect. So let's go ahead and put 12. As you can see here, no problem. Let me run it again. Remember, I'm using if statement here. I'm going to go with 13. Oh, he didn't like it. Let's go with 14. Well, that's correct. Let me update this. I was going to come here and type system dot out dot print line that's not even. Try again. Okay, remember there's T here. So let's run it again. Now I'm going to give you a condition where I'm going to make a mistake now. 13. That's not good. So try again. This is an even number. I'll go with 9. As you can see here, you entered a 9, an even number that's 9. So if I just come here and replace this with a while, what's going to happen? Well, at the beginning, after I entered the number, if that number was even, so that basically means this condition is going to be false, and I don't have to run the whole thing here. Now remember this example because we're going to use it again later when we talk about the other for loops. The other loop, sorry. So if this condition is false, that basically means I entered an even number here, then there's no need to go through all this. Immediately jump into showing the message. Now, if you make a mistake, you're going to make this condition to be true, and when it's true, you're going to run through those messages, and then you're going to have to enter a new even number. Make a new mistake, and when you go back here, it's still this is going to be true because, for example, if I entered 17, 17 is not an even number, so basically that's true. So it's going to go back here. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Let me try it again. I'm going to enter an even number. Let's start with 27. That's not an even number. Let's start with 7. That's not an even number. Let's start with 9. That's not an even number. Let's start with 8. Now it is an even number. So this is basically a way so that you can use to force the user to enter a value that you want him to enter. For example, I can replace this with a positive number, and I will just say if the number that the user entered was less than 0, that is it's a negative, so ask him to enter a new number. And you can ask the user to enter a value in a specific range, like for example between 0 and 10. So you can put here if the number was greater than 0 and less than 10, then it's true. But if it's not, just put a not in front of it. That basically means he made a mistake. So repeatedly ask him to enter the value until he actually entered the correct value. I am gonna stop at this point, and I'm gonna be moving on to a different topic. It's a little bit related, but not that related. It's basically mentioned in the PowerPoint, so I felt like it's a good idea to talk about it. Then after that, I'm going to stop this video, and after that, we'll start with a new one where I'm going to talk about the for loops and the do while loops. And by the way, by the time I'm done with all of these loops, I'm going to go through the labs that we have for this chapter. I'm not going to answer the questions. I'm going to read them, give you the starting, just to give you an idea about how to start answering those questions. That should help. Okay, so let's keep moving on. Now, previously we talked about the increment operation, but now we're going to talk about it in a little bit more detail. I'm not sure if I mentioned that before or not, but let me just do it. Let's imagine you have a variable x equal 10. Just remember, I'm moving to a different subject right now. Now, if I come here and type the following, plus plus x or x plus plus, either one of them, both of those expressions basically are going to increase x by 1. Just remember, this is going to make it 11 and this will make it 12. But here's the deal. The location of those plus plus operations plays a very, very important role in certain cases. And I'm going to show you an example. System.out.println. Now, look what I'm going to do. I'm going to come type plus plus x, lowercase x, and let me run it. And here we go. I'm going to put a 12 here just for it to be true. And look at here. I got 11. This is x. Oh, you know what? Let me just type x equal, and well, you don't want to have a problem, so just put parentheses, so come on, Eclipse, what are you doing? Let me run it again. Now, 12th again, and here you can see X. Now let me just move the plus plus on the other side, and let me run it. 12 again. Oh, look at that now. X equals 10. The question is, what is the real value of X here? The answer is 11. Well, if it's 11, why is it printing it as 10? Well, there's an explanation for that, and let me just explain it to you right now. When you put when you put plus plus X, it basically means increase X by 1 and then use it for whatever reason you're trying to use it. And when you put X plus plus, it means use the original value of X for whatever you're trying to do with it, and then increase it by 1. So when I put, let me just go back here. When I typed plus plus X, that basically means increase X by 1 and then use it for the print function here. And that's why you got the 11. Now when you put it as plus plus X, X plus plus, that basically means use X as it is, which is 10. So it's going to be printed as 10, and then after you're done with the printing and the whole thing, and before you move to the next line, X need to be updated by 1. Why is this a big deal? Yes, because sometimes you're trying to update a value, and if you just didn't realize where's the right position to type those plus plus, then you're going to be in big trouble, my friend. So I am going to stop at this point, and next class I'm going to start with the for loop and the do while loop. Just to remind you about what we said so far, this here is a while loop, repeating structure. You have the keyword while followed with the parentheses. Inside the parentheses here, you need to have a Boolean expression. This Boolean expression basically will be evaluated to true or false. If it's true, whatever you have between the curly braces will be implemented. So as long as this condition is true, this is going to be repeatedly executed. Until this condition becomes false, those instructions are going to be, statements are going to be executed. And then when this Boolean expression became false, that's where you're going to leave the body of this while loop. Now, as I said before, sometimes we know how many times the while loop is going to be executed. Sometimes we don't know. Sometimes the user would decide. Sometimes it's going to be connected, for example, to a sensor. For example, I can have a while loop that goes forever to check all the doors in a building. And then when one of the doors is open, that's where I'm going to stop checking and start making that alarm sound. So basically my while loop was connected to all the sensors in those doors that check them periodically forever. I was talking about forever. I can actually do this. But again, this is not a good practice. While true, and I'll come here and say if even module, where's the module? Nope. Where is it? Here it is. 2 equals 0, break. So what I did here, sorry for that, I basically decided that this loop is going to go forever. And I just put an if statement here with a break statement here. This break you remembered from the switch. And what I'm saying here, whenever even divided by 2 will give you a remainder of 0, which basically means it's an even number, break. Break here basically will take you out of the loop and you move on here. So that's another thing to think about. Remember, never put a semicolon here. This will be the last thing we're going to talk about in this class. Never put a semicolon here. I'll see you guys with the next